Welcome back. A group of civil society organizations have launched an electoral reform panel. It comes after government apparently snubbed them in the creation of this panel in May of last year. Now, electoral reform in the country has taken center stage, particularly since a Concourt ruling. And let's unpack this further now with Boikanyo Moloto, who is with My Vote Counts. And Boikanyo, this renewed focus or this increased focus on electoral reform is since 2020 and that Concourt ruling that I'm talking about, allowing for independents to contest in national and local government elections.
Yes, Michelle. So the Civil Society Electoral Reform Panel is built on years of campaigning to reshape South Africa's electoral reform process. As we might all know, in 1994, the elections were held under a transitionary arrangement. And so the electoral system that was chosen for its simplicity and its inclusivity. It was not meant to be a permanent thing. Over the years, there have been many debates over electoral reform, many recommendations over electoral reform. And since 2020, there's been this renewed debate. So the Civil Society Electoral Reform Panel itself wasn't formed or established in opposition to or counter to or as a result of being snubbed by the parliamentary state panel. It was an idea that was created last year. We started implementing and establishing the entire panel at the beginning of the year. And as we all know, the state chose its own panel in May this year.
Just, you're saying it was formed not as a result of being snubbed by Parliament, but what was the reason for this legislatively required electoral reform panel not to be appointed? What was Parliament's and the Home Affairs Minister's reasoning?
So the reasoning behind the parliamentary panel is from the Electoral Matters Amendment Act. There was a sunset clause included in there where the state was instructed to establish another panel. So as we might know, in the past couple of years, we've also had other task teams and ministerial advisory committees that were meant to work or mandated to work on electoral reform or advise on the electoral system. None of their recommendations have been implemented. And so now they are forming another one. So with us forming this civil society organization, it was truly just an innovative way of saying we are committed to the work of electoral reform. We are committed to having a voice and participating, but we'd also like to begin our own process so that we can have a tangible framework that we can advocate for at the end of this and push forward to Parliament.
Right. So Boikanyo, the 2020 decision in the Constitutional Court that we've been talking about, allowing independents to contest national and local government elections, there was a hope that this would lead to increased or substantial electoral reform in the country, right? Effectively getting greater accountability for public representatives. That hasn't happened, has it?
Yes. So the only major change that we've had in our electoral system in the past 30 years is the inclusion of independent candidates to be able to contest national and provincial elections. However, as the electoral system stands right now, there are so many barriers for independent candidates that it does not put them on the same equitable footing as political parties. Our electoral system right now, as it stands, is much more biased or is much more supportive towards political parties and the structures that provide support for the people that they would then present to run for elections.
Yeah, and in fact, that was a huge issue going into the May 29 elections, right? In the weeks leading up to it, the fact that there were so many hurdles for independence.
Yes, that is very much true. So we are hoping that with this work, we can really look at our context, look at the different democratic principles that all these organizations that are involved are committed to, and also look at what is possible in terms of every adult citizen being able to run while being part of or not part of a political party. Hopefully, that is something that we can advocate for an electoral system for 2029.
So you've answered my next question in part, but outside of that, what else would be included in the scope of looking at electoral reform in South Africa?
So what else would we look at? So for us, for the process for now is starting with the research and doing public participation processes with forums and seeing our limitations in resources as NPOs and NGOs, civil society. The organizations that we did choose are organizations that have wide constituencies across the board, right? That can give us access to the youth, that can give us access to informal settlers, that can give us access to people in rural areas. We are hoping that with that, we are able to really advocate behind a framework that is people-led, that puts the voices of people ahead.
And what would the process of, say, perhaps changing the current system is overstating it, but what would be the process of any kind of reform? You're a civil society organization, and this panel is made up of civil society organizations. How would that change happen in Parliament?
I mean, with the work that's been done by civil society so far, especially the work from 2020, all these various civil society organizations who have really played a huge fundamental role in electoral reform. We continue to take part in the public participation processes that are given to us by the state. So making submissions, making presentations to Parliament. We are hoping that with this framework itself, that we can have something tangible that we can say to the state. We are not just criticizing, we have a solution. We hope that will make things easier as the process goes.
We're talking electoral reform with Boikanyo Moloto. She's with My Vote Counts, and we've just had the May 29 elections, but it's all systems go for national elections 2029. Boikanyo, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michelle.